Hey everyone, welcome to the Roundtable with Vienna Whyte, Season 1, Episode 38. I'm your host, Millie Rouge, from the band Vienna Whyte here in Edmonton, Canada. This Roundtable is a YEG Music production. Thank you all for tuning into the show today. I would like to introduce you to our guests. So we have Eric Spoke, based in Dallas, and then we also have Brett, who's based in Pittsburgh. So thank you both for being here today. Let's get into your kind of musical journeys and let's hear some more about kind of what you guys do as musicians. So Eric Spoke, can you kind of give us a quick 2 to 3 minute intro to your kind of musical career and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so yeah, I got into music kind of late. I played a bit of piano as a kid, but didn't actually start really writing songs and making songs until I was 21. I'm 26 now. Yeah, I was at Texas A&M, a big school, doing like neuropsychology, and then just dropped out because I just fell in love with music, and actually became my career path. I'm an audio engineer now. I work at a studio, and I produce, play keys, sing in a band, and yeah, it's a lot of different genre blending stuff. Yeah, I'll take a lot of different approaches, but I usually end up producing most of my songs and just having a guitarist kind of add a little on top, and that's kind of our songwriting process.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, Brett, can you tell us a little bit about your musical journey and how you got to where you are today?
So my story is a bit of a longer one, but I'll give you a synopsis. So I was in elementary school band, mainly because my dad was in the band. He played trumpet. And I worked the ranks, got to middle school band. And the first piece of sheet music that we got was pep rally music, and it was Back in Black. And I went home because I was super competitive back in those days. And I looked it up on YouTube, and I was going to play with it so I could get first chair and, be the coolest kid in band. And I, as soon as Back in Black, the music video started, I was just blown away. And I'd say since 7th grade, I started playing guitar, started eventually trying to get more confident in singing. And then I had a high school band with my good buddies called Panama. We're going to make it big someday. And we, just wrote songs and had good times, and I just haven't stopped since, I guess. So.
That's amazing. So our topic for today will actually kind of dive into what these two gentlemen have already started talking about already. So can you guys kind of both walk us through how you normally get inspired to start writing something new? So Eric, can you kind of take us through your process of how you get to writing a new song?
I've had a couple different approaches and things I've tried to, try out in terms of songwriting, but usually I just sit down at my desk, and that's when all the inspiration starts. I've kind of conditioned myself to associate sitting down at my desk with creativity. And so I do that if I'm going to write a poem or write a song. I'm just going to sit down, and inspiration isn't really a big part. I wouldn't say I have to feel inspired to work. I just have to sit down, and then I work, and I keep what's good. Certain emotions will fuel me or fuel my songs if I'm feeling them when I sit down, but I try to be kind of aimless, kind of let the song. I'll sit down, kind of make a drum beat on Ableton, and then a bass line, and then I just add lyrics, and then I'll rework the lyrics, record them, re-record them later, and eventually it's a whole song.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think some artists feel there's a pressure to have inspiration every single time they write, but I think if you've been doing music for long enough, and Brett, I'm sure you kind of feel this too, you kind of get to the point where you're like, I don't have to be inspired, I can just write, and if it's garbage, it goes in the trash, and if it's great, it's great. So what has your experience been like, Brett, when you're songwriting and making a brand new song from start to finish?
Actually, I envy both of you, because I feel like the best stuff that I write, or when I write the most, is when I'm inspired. But I'm definitely trying to condition myself to get more into creative writing that doesn't require a certain strong set of emotions. But I think the best material that I've ever written either comes from, a fit of anger, sorrow, joy, any emotion, but it comes from something. And I would say some of my friends call me a philosophical dude, so I try and I try and write songs that have a little bit more meaning, but So I guess it depends on the feeling. If I want to say something that I think is important to me or to other people, or, something just stirs me up, that's pretty much how it
Totally.
goes for the most part.
Yeah. So that actually, the point that you made actually brought me to another question I just thought of. Do you typically write from your own perspective? And if you do, or if you don't, do you find it more difficult to try and write from like a friend's perspective, or like someone you made up in your mind, like a character? Have you ever experimented with that before, Brett?
Yeah, I guess it depends. I mean, I've written from, some friends have come to me about certain things
Mm-hmm.
through my life, and depending on the scenario, I think it's easier to get into, because it's all sparked by emotion. So if somebody's like
Right.
upset about something or something's happened, it's easier to dive into it. So I would say for the most part, when I write my own material, it's more or less based into my own perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the songwriting process, and well, not even just songwriting, but the creative process in general, because there's the songwriting aspect, but there's also the music making aspect. When do you guys feel like you typically hit your first roadblocks in a song? Because sometimes songs can be effortlessly written, but there are a lot of the time you hit that kind of like that road bump. So my kind of question is when do you hit that roadblock? And is it always the same spots that typically where it happens, or does it vary? You know, it's kind of like a wordy question, but I'm curious to know when you kind of get to that point. So Eric, do you experience that when you're kind of making your own productions and your own beats for your own songs?
Yeah, the drums always come easy for me. Drums come really easily, even though I was never a drummer. It's just like
Mm,
something I always start with drums. Usually I start hit hurdles lately. It's been vocal melodies. I feel like
mm,
I've done every vocal melody I can think of recently, and because I've written thousands of songs, like it's
yeah,
like I just feel like I'm out of them. But that makes me want to go try to borrow from different genres. I might borrow from hip hop a little bit. I might
totally.
borrow from like just a lot of stuff. I'm a big music
Mhm.
nerd, but yeah, that's usually what I do. Is when I hit the block, I try to take an outside perspective. I look at a genre that I don't usually listen to,
Right.
or haven't listened to in a while, and it's not in the forefront of my mind. I try to, like, hey, what are they doing there? Just try to
Mhm.
look at the people who have achieved what I'm trying to achieve right now, and see how
Yeah,
they did it.
yeah, that's actually a really good piece of advice. That led me to a question. What would you classify your genre as, Eric?
Ooh, okay, so
A hard question.
yeah, for the sake of our Instagram says alt pop, but I kind of want to change it. There's this
Mm.
artist Nudes. With the he's like Apple's in-house songwriter. Like he just all his songs are on the iPhone commercials, and
Oh, okay.
he calls his stuff laptop punk. He calls his stuff laptop punk,
Oh,
and I kind of want to take that because
that's
that's really
cool.
what I like it's it's got the electronic DIY aesthetic, and the do-it-yourself thing is kind of shared with punk, and in my music, I kind of always have a punk outsider kind of attitude that I like to write into my lyrics. You
Hmm.
know, kind of like a Joker type or something like that. But not someone who goes with the grain and of society normally. So
Yeah,
laptop punk rebel stuff. I kind of like that idea for my
that's
genre.
cool. I love that genre name. That is so
Yeah,
dope.
I'm in favor of that. I definitely think you should take that. You should label it too, like laptop punk rebel stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
rebels.
Slash rebel stuff.
We were
Yeah.
thinking that or pop weird. Just
Pop
pop
weird. I love it. Super obscure pop,
weird
if
being
you
a
will.
genre.
How about
Yeah.
yourself, Brett?
Yeah.
What's kind of your genre that you classify yourself under?
I don't know, nothing as creative as Eric said. More or less, my roots are based in alternative rock music.
Okay, cool.
But more and more recently, I've gotten more into songwriting and lyric crafting. So I've ventured down the folk path.
Mm,
And I have a lot of bands that intermix the sounds of really harsh and hard alternative rock, but at the same time have really twangy and clever writing.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I
Violent
guess if I had to
Femmes.
pick, say again?
Violent Femmes, for example. You like
Yeah,
them?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I guess if I had to pick, like I would maybe say like alt folk, something
Okay,
like that.
very cool. So I didn't ask you this question yet, Brett, but can you kind of tell us when you typically hit that roadblock and what kind of ways you get around that to get out of that roadblock when you're songwriting or co-writing?
Specifically at a minute 31, I always hit the roadblock. But
In 36 seconds, hold on.
yeah, I'm like, oh god, here it comes.
Oh
Uh,
no.
Yeah.
for the most part, I guess it just depends. tend to struggle with lyrics just because I question. I'm an overthinker, so I tend to question myself. Like, is this
Yeah.
like does this have meaning? Does this make sense to me? I'm trying to fill in all these boxes, and although I'm trying to please myself when I am writing for myself in the grand scheme of things, I prefer like it makes sense to everybody else. So
Right.
when it comes to writing and hitting roadblocks, it'll mainly be with the second verse, for example. Like, how's the story going? Is it connecting down the road? Because usually the first and the third verse and the choruses, I think, are all fine. But when I get into that middle part, I'm like, how do I connect point A and point B? Like, how does it all come together?
I have a little tip for that I just wanted to share. Is one writer's block is I try to always, I'm a big believer in mindfulness, big practicer of mindfulness meditation, but I try to be in a mindful spot when I write. But I'll set a rule for myself is that once it is typed or written down, I can't erase it. Like unless I'm going to throw away the whole verse. Once I've written it down, next part. And you'll actually be surprised some of the most profound stuff you'll get out of doing that.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting piece of advice, because I think a lot of the time when we erase something, like you said, or we kind of take it out, we're putting in a second thought that's not really as authentic as that first initial thought. So yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. And I also am a huge fan of like mindfulness meditation. So I think that's a really cool thing that you brought up, because it does put you in a different state of mind when you are writing or creating or whatever you choose to do. So yeah, that's really,
I appreciate it. And feel free to just spit any tips my way. Like,
just throw them. Yeah, I know with my band, like we're a pop duo, so there's just two of us. But what we do typically when we're facing writer's block is we do object writing. So we pick an object in the room, we give ourselves 3 minutes, and we say, okay, just write whatever you want. It doesn't have to necessarily be like, format A, B, C, A, B, A, whatever. It's just writing. So that's been really helpful, because you can actually get a lot of like metaphors. Like one time we wrote a story about, I had a plastic Barbie doll in my living room for whatever reason. And it was sitting there, and I wrote about this Barbie being stuck in like 4 walls in a room and being very like just still and not moving. And we ended up writing this like basically quarantine song about a Barbie doll, but kind of relating to our own lives too, right? So that kind of writing is really, really interesting, and I'm always a fan. And it's a really good way to start your writing process, because you really get your brain kind of being like, okay, we're getting into gear like this. We're going to start writing. We got to put our brain in kind of that mode, right? So I try it one time. It's really fun.
No, my song, I went to school for recording arts, and my songwriting professor always made us do object writing every day. It was like a huge thing.
It's good practice. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So my next question is kind of about more of the mixing side of music, but I know, Eric, this might be something that maybe resonates and brings home to you, but with editing software, there's so many different sounds and different effects or tones, or even guitars. There's a lot of guitar pedals you can have. So how do you pick and choose where that will fit into your song with there being so many options? Now, this can also be when you're at a studio and the producer's looking at you like, okay, what do you think of this guitar effect? And you're kind of like, I don't know. How do you guys kind of process and pick what's right for your song when you're going through so many different instruments?
You can go ahead, Brett, if you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like you're the expert when it comes to this field. But typically, I don't know. I think I have a pretty set, vision in my head going into the song. Like, I know what I want it to sound like, and I'll pretty much just try and narrow down how I can find that sound. And pretty much in my experience, whenever I find it, like, it's not like lyrics. I don't second guess myself. When I find a sound that I like, I'm immediately like, that's it. I know that's what I want, and I keep it.
Yeah.
For me, sorry, I had him answer first because I wanted to think about it. But I think it's about, well, as someone who like wants to release commercial music, like, music for the sake of being consumed, I always I always design my songs with that in mind. Now it feels like, I have to balance, my personal tastes with that. And that's where the fun puzzle kind of challenge of it comes in. But I think that, the first things first, I think, hey, do I like how it sounds? Will everyone else like how it sounds? Or do the people I want listening to my stuff, will they like it?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think about second. Yeah, it's just, you know, if a lot of things, if they feel right, it feels right, and usually it works out. So
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's just trusting your gut. And I know as musicians, we really second guess ourselves because we're like, oh, my audience won't like it, or my audience will think this is too deep, or this is too simplistic. But I think that's what they want to hear, is they want to hear what you're thinking and what your kind of mind process is doing. So I think when we kind of cloud it and like make it almost someone we're not, it comes out wrong most of the times, I think, for sure. So this question's on the more positive note, but what's your favorite moment when you're writing? What kind of gives you the most joy or the most bliss, if you will, when you're in that creative writing process? What would you say, Brett, is your favorite part?
It's a feeling of satisfaction. So back to the lyric thing, when I'm working on a song right now that I plan to release on an EP, and it's giving me a little bit of, because I'm trying to find that, you know, connecting bridge between A and B.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found like one line to a part of the verse, and I was just, you know, it took me forever to like figure out, how do I say this, and I tried so many metaphors and different similes, and I finally got it. I was punching the air as soon as I got it. So when it comes to songwriting, I think when I'm telling the story, and I find out what I want to say in the most poetic way possible, but it's not like some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just like some kind of like, you know, poetic, you know, gibberish. Where it makes sense, and it's also kind of
balance. Yeah, I find the balance between the mundane and the insightful. Like if you can make something every day seem, just like look at it a little differently, that's like the best kind of poetic lyrics.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, actually. I find that a lot when I'm writing a song and there's that one line that I'm like, ooh, that is so good. Like that's the moment, I think, for a lot of artists where we're like, yes, I got like kind of the theme or the epitome of the song, right? And I think we really hope that our fans and our audience will like notice that one line. But I mean, I don't even know if they do, but that's how it feels for me, at least.
Yeah, for me, it's whatever, like the one lyric that sends like a chill down my spine when I say it. Yeah, like I had this one where I said, "You left your toothbrush at my house once. I use it when I forget how you taste." And it just, I was like, you know, that was the best feeling ever. I was like, that is crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's amazing. So what's your kind of favorite moment when you're writing, Eric, when you kind of are in that producer creative moment?
Yeah, really, probably that. Like it's either that or the moment my head starts bobbing, when I'm like, oh, okay, this works.
Okay.
You know, I love that feeling. You know, it's really reassuring. It just encourages you to go further into the song.
Yeah, I think if your body's moving to your own music, that says something. That if your internal body can do it as well, that it means it's really good. So my last question actually for the day is, what tips would you guys give to brand new writers who are new to this kind of creative process and are a little bit uncomfortable with how to do it and they're not sure where to start? What advice would you give to them about writing? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mark Twain said it best: the first step of doing something is to do it.
Mm.
Yeah, I just say find, you know, just you find whatever you need to just make it a habit. I mean, like I know that sounds tough, but like, you know, just try to find the little victories, whether it's like 1 minute of writing. Just try to sit down and do it, and work your way up to actually writing more regularly and for a longer amount of time. But it just starts by finding the courage and the motivation to do it. And you know, I don't have advice, you know, specifically on that part, but
no, that's really great. Practice does make perfect. And Brett, what's kind of your advice you'd give to a brand new writer who's a little bit nervous about the process?
Pretty much what Eric just said, honestly. My uncle is a huge inspiration and helps me out with a lot of my songwriting because he's been in the music industry for a while. And he told me that, you know, you're going to write 75 songs within a month per se, or even in a day, and you're going to like one of them. So he told me you just need to keep writing and force yourself to do it. And you'll find that balance where, you know, it does become a habit, but you believe in your art. You're not just like, this is just some dumb exercise, pretty much.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really cool. So that was our last question for the day. We are unfortunately out of time. We were so lucky to have had you all on today. If you guys are at home watching this roundtable, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you can be notified about our shows. We post twice a day, Monday to Friday, so there's lots of content to watch. If you guys want to listen to this conversation in podcast form instead, just search up Vienna Whyte Podcast to start listening. So before we sign off here, could I get you both to say your stage name and where our audience can find you on social media? Eric, can you start it off?
Yeah, Eric spoke for my solo stuff, but my big project right now is Overshare. So just search overshare_band on Instagram. Yeah, with a lot of new cool music coming out and videos. So, yeah,
Amazing.
really excited about that stuff.
Okay, and Brett.
Simple as it could be, Brett Trottier. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm working towards an EP in the future and hopefully I'll get that on Spotify, but for the most part I just do covers for people on request on Instagram and some live shows from time to time. So.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you both so much for being a part of today's episode. It was so great meeting you. Have a great day.
Hey, thank you so much.
You guys.
You have a good day.